How is everybody doing? Welcome back to another episode of The Banker Next Door. I am your host, Dr. Joe Berquist. I am very excited today because I have a great interview. Dr. William Minnis is with us today. He is a former bank CEO, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about what is the CEO experience like at a bank. And I think he has a really interesting story to tell. Bill has got an incredible background. I'm going to fill everybody in on that momentarily, but I want to bring Dr. Minnis in with us. How are you doing today, Bill?
Doing very well. Thank you, Joe.
Yes, thank you so much for coming on and spending a little bit of time with us.
It's great. I look forward to it. I've been kind of excited about it. I look forward to seeing you again. It's always good to see you.
Oh, thank you so much, sir. Yeah, it has been a while, and this will be a great opportunity for us to catch up.
Yep.
Okay, so if I could start the conversation today, could you tell us a little bit about the bank that you were CEO at and how you got started in the CEO role at that bank?
Yeah, it's kind of a coincidence, really. I was on the board of directors of Citizens National Bank in Paris, Illinois, and our president decided to leave. And we started a headhunt. They had a committee, and they were having trouble recruiting anybody, and at least one they wanted. And they went to see a headhunter, and the headhunter happened to be one of my past students, Joe. So the headhunter first give me the names of the people on your board. So she looked down and she goes, Bill Minnis is on your board. You don't need anybody else. Just hire Bill Minnis. So I had never worked at a bank. I had been on boards of a couple of banks. So I became president in 2007, which those in your audience who know 2007 was not exactly the time to enter banking. So I kind of left academics for 5 years and became a bank president CEO, and went through quite an education. The bank ended up being sold. We were one of those banks that was identified by regulators as having being in fact, the two banks that were better than us were closed. And I had some kind of innovative ideas. And so we stayed open, and our stock price went from $100 a share to $5. And then we sold the bank up near what it was originally. So it was a 5-year good news, bad news, good news kind of thing.
Okay, so Bill, can you give us a flavor for a little bit about what were some of the things about the job that you liked, or what were some of the things that you didn't like?
Well, I loved the job. I will tell you that entering banking without being in banking is like any industry, any kind of job. And most bankers don't realize the number of acronyms and the specialized language. So I carried a little red book. As an academic, I read entry to financial institutions, medium financial institutions, graduate level financial institutions, read the textbooks. Many of the senior administrative people could tell where I was and what chapter I was on, but I had to learn the language and the acronyms, and that was challenging, and I enjoyed that part, but it was also sometimes frustrating. I could be in the middle of a conversation and there were acronyms being thrown around, and I really I was a bit uneasy about that, but I enjoyed that a lot. The part I enjoyed the most is when I left banking, I had a number of headhunters get a hold of me, Joe, and they said, we have banks who want to interview you. Well, I live on a farm, as I've mentioned before, so I couldn't really move to the other side of the state or a different state. And they said, oh, but you have great talent. You're a crappy bank manager. And I said, crappy is not exactly. Oh, so you're not crappy. You're good at managing crappy banks. We have a bank where the CEO and the CFO just embezzled, and we have one that has huge amounts of bad loans. You're the person for that job. So what I kind of discovered was, I have high levels of courage that I didn't think I had, because I was receiving a lot of threatening phone calls from people who we were having some bad times during that period. And I also learned that probably I'm better at turning something around than I am running it if it's doing well. So it was a good experience, and I'm kind of sorry to some degree I didn't stay in it. And at the same time, Every time one door closes, other doors open, and I ended up being dean at the university, and that was also a good experience.
Yeah, it's so interesting, Bill. It's often said that the bankers and the regulators, we love our acronyms. We
Oh
love
yeah,
our acronyms.
yeah,
And yeah,
yeah,
it is. The vocabulary issue is it actually is a very big thing when you first get into the business or when you're learning the business. People have a conversation and you could hear literally 15 acronyms in one conversation. You're
yeah,
totally lost. What's going on?
yeah,
it's very interesting from that perspective. So,
yeah.
um, so
And
let me ask you
it's important
this.
to customers.
Yeah.
Customers don't understand the acronyms, and I think sometimes bankers forget that the customer can't figure out what they're saying because they're using too many acronyms. And it did kind of make me more aware the people in the room needed to know what was actually being talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. So, given this very interesting experience that you had as a bank CEO, working on a bank that was very troubled, had a lot of issues, is there anything that you can reflect on now that you think you may have done differently, looking back on it now?
I think team development was extremely important. I had to, when I kind of figured out, and it was not hard for me to figure out, I could not do it by myself. Um, it was real important to get the right team of people. And it meant I had to replace some folks, Joe, but at the same time, getting the right group of people all on the same page um, really helped. That's number one. Number two is banks don't use much of their data. Um, they are prone to doing everything the same way, and they don't take advantage of the data that they have available.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it's interesting that you say that, Bill, because you're reminding me of conversations that you and I have had in years past about that very topic and about how banks could definitely use their data a lot better if they, just worked at it perhaps a little bit more. Um, but that's a very interesting conversation. I'll tell you what, you and I will have to come back and talk. We could talk. We could do a whole episode just on that topic. So we'll have to,
Sure.
like I said, we'll come back to that one though. So.
Okay.
Uh, Let me ask you this. If there was anybody who was either aspiring to be a bank CEO or maybe they're about to start that job, any of our listeners out there right now, would you have any advice for them going into that position?
Well, I think the graduate bank schools are good places. I think that signals to folks that you want to move up and that you're willing to take things on. I think it's also important that you understand everything that's going on in a bank. So maybe moving from a credit analyst to lending, but also spending some time in mortgage and in some of the areas of the bank that maybe a lot of times bank presidents don't come up that direction, the retail side of things. And I also think it's good to become a community person. You really can't become a bank president if you, in fact, aren't willing to spend time in the community. People expect bankers to be there. In my case, it was a lot to do with my education and my preparation from the standpoint of being able to read financial statements, being able to understand what I was seeing and problem solve. So all those things, I think if you're going to aspire to that position, you don't want to aspire to it just because you think it's important and it pays a lot. You really need to understand the skill set. And there is a skill set to being a good president CEO.
No, and I think that's fantastic, Bill. And I think my involvement with the Stonier, School of Banking. I've been
Yes.
teaching there a long time. Went through the program a number of years ago, and so I'm absolutely 100% on board with you there. I think that going through some type of school like that is hugely beneficial to somebody in their career. It gives you great exposure to a lot of other executives because it's not like college and it's not like undergrad because your average age range is probably that 35 to 55-year-old individual right in
Yeah.
the heart of their career, and you get mixed in with a lot of people from all over the country. So it's a very very mixed group of people, and you get a lot of different experiences, and you get people who really know their stuff. They've been in the business for a long time. They're professionals. And so I think the conversations that you have are at a much deeper level, and there's a lot to be learned there. So I've always been, a huge advocate for the banking schools. And so I absolutely agree with you there. And I love your comments about working in different areas of the bank, because I agree with you. I think that's very important. I think wherever you come up in the bank, like if you're on the retail side or you're on the commercial side, you also get a lot of people that are on the finance side. They're the controller, then they're the CFO, and then they move up. And so, yeah, I think it is very important to get a flavor for those different departments and all those different areas of the bank, because like you said, when you're the top person, you touch in some way, shape, or form. You touch, or you have to work with people in all those different aspects of the bank, and it's a lot. It's a lot. I mean, it's a lot to know, a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah. There are a lot of. I mean, even managing funds that are not invested, understanding how to keep those invested and how to optimize funds that you have on hand. And I think that the whole idea of being a CEO is you do have this external activity, and I did a lot of that, but I spent probably 12 hours a day reviewing loans, looking at how our assets were in fact deployed and what kind of return, whether it was a building, a branch, whether it was a mobile banking app, whether it was people. And how our loan portfolio was operating just constantly, to really make sure that the portfolio was optimized. And I think sometimes bank presidents are selected based on their marketing capability, and they're weaker on managing the financial aspects of the business. And to be honest with you, that's what a bank is. It's a financial services entity.
Well, yeah, and it's very interesting that you say that, Bill, because I think that, depending on the situation, exposes exposes how that goes. Like, in other words, if you're in a period of time where everything's hunky dory, you're making profits, the bank's paying a dividend, everybody's pretty much happy for the most part, you can kind of manage through that. But if you hit a really bad period like you did in 07, 08, 09, and you've got a lot of delinquent loans, and you're trying to work deals out with borrowers and trying to figure things out, that presents a whole different scenario. And like you said, you have to bring different skills to bear in that kind of situation. And it does, again. And I've known CEOs that have gone through both good times and bad times. And and I think what I would add to it is what I've taken from those different individuals is that, like, you're probably going to find out a lot more about yourself in those rough periods, but like you said, or like you alluded to earlier, you probably found courage that you didn't know you had because of all the things that you had to go through during that time period. So again, it's really, really interesting to look at and
we
think
had
about.
a record year, Joe. The year that I came there, they had a record year, but what they didn't know was that the record year we had a rogue lender, and so we had a number of loans that were being refinanced. I mean, people were not watching the ship, and so consequently, and I think any banker right now knows that the difference between risk and uncertainty, which right now we're in a lot of uncertainty. You can't measure uncertainty, which means you kind of have to constantly be aware of what's going on around you, and that macro, and not only in the macro environment, but also in the industry. And I think that those periods of really good times are usually not as good as long as people think they are. I mean, there are other roadblocks and barriers to success that a bank president has to be a bit paranoid of. I mean, has to be aware.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I would agree with you completely on that, Bill. So, all right. So let's move into a couple other things. So I did want to talk about your background a little bit here, Bill, because you do have a very different background from many other bankers that I've seen. And so you've got an MBA from Indiana State University. You got a PhD from St. Louis University. You've spent a lot of time in your career as a teacher, and you're currently
as a professor, Joe.
as a
I don't
professor.
have
Yes.
not like teachers are licensed. I have no license.
But you are Professor Emeritus at Eastern Illinois University, which I think is a great accomplishment. So talk to us a little bit about that. Like what do you, can you tell us maybe a little bit about your, that side of your career and maybe some of the things, like, what are you up to now?
Well, I was a healthcare administrator for 13 years, and I ended up going to Indiana State. And when I finished my MBA, I started running the research center. And I was at Indiana State for 16 years. Went to EIU, and I was there technically 23 years, but 5 years of that I was a bank president, and 2 of it I was a dean, which is a different kind of a role. In most cases, like when I was dean, we reorganized the college. That's primarily why I was asked to be dean, was because we were going through a reorganization. I've done a lot of consulting. I've written, I don't know, $50 million in grants and funding in healthcare and in education. I currently, we have a home in Scotland, so I do a lot of work in Scotland. I'm part of a mentoring program there. And last semester, I went back and taught because a faculty member had health concerns. So I actually just finished putting my final grades in, which I didn't think I'd be doing again. I'll be speaking at a construction conference in September. Scottish, the whole area of Scotland has a conference for construction people. I'm talking on leadership, and I supervised a couple of dissertations at universities in Scotland. So I like Scotland a lot, Joe. I raise cattle. I'm a fifth generation on a family farm. So I cut the herd back to 70 head. I used to have about 150. I've got some entrepreneurial things going. I'm collecting and selling embryos in the UK for my herd. And I'm also working with the AI company that you and I, that's how we met. I work for an AI company that actually sells through Abrigo, a product that is used for bank analysis. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a great segue, Bill. So I'll basically say real quick. So how Bill and I met was basically I had just finished my doctorate at Wilmington University, and my sponsor for the doctorate was a company called Abrigo, which Bill just alluded to. And Abrigo was kind enough; they actually invited me down to their annual conference that they do every year, which is called the Think Big Conference. And the year I went down a couple years ago, they actually was down in San Antonio, Texas. And so I was down there, and I was getting ready to do. They had me doing like a couple of segments talking about my work and what I did, and then Bill was he was very, very kind to me. I think I was a little nervous because it was the first time I had ever kind of done that publicly on that level or that stage, if you will. And Bill was very nice. He was very good to me. And like I said, we kind of struck up a friendship right away, and talked ever since. So that was kind of how Bill. That was a story about how Bill and I met.
Yeah, it was a good. It's a good conference. My son, Joe, he is the dean of faculty at Booth at the University of Chicago, and he actually used Abrigo data. Back then, it wasn't Abrigo. It was SageWorks, but it was their data for his dissertation at Michigan. And so I've known Abrigo. I was a beta bank for SageWorks when it first started. So very familiar with it. And but it's a good conference, and you did a great job. And I think it's a kind of conference it's gotten pretty large, and it's an interesting group of people.
Yeah, it's great. Well, Abrigo is a great organization. I love those guys. I sing their praises all the time. They've got some great employees over there doing a lot of great things. I undoubtedly will be talking about them more and some of the things they do in different podcast episodes. I have had one of their employees on to talk about loan automation, which was great. I'm sure I'll have them back soon because I really want to get into kind of the AI on top of loan
Yeah.
automation now, and all the things that are happening in that area, which I think will make for a great conversation. But I'll tell you what. Let me ask you this, Bill, because so now we're kind of come to the end. I always ask this of every interviewee that I have. Do you have a favorite business related movie or a favorite business book?
Um, I don't watch a lot of movies, so I'm going to disappoint you there. I can't sit down that long. So, book wise, most of the books that I most thoroughly enjoy are I'm writing a book on mentoring, which ought to be coming out, I hope, by the first of the year.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
that may be my favorite book. I have a second book that's also being edited right now. That's more kind of an accumulation of a whole lot of blogs that I've written that I put together on transition. But there are some books that I like that are what I would consider more seminal books, whether it's Peter Drucker's stuff or it's Singh's stuff on fifth discipline, or it's they're books that I feel like kind of introduce theory, but they introduce it in a way that people can understand. So you've got a lot of Nobel Prize winners who write books like Nudge, which
Mhm.
I have my students read, and I think those books are of value. I read I read a lot of graduate books because I like the vocabulary stuff. Vocabulary empowers people, and I think if you read a book that's super easy and is kind of I call them airplane books. It's a book you can get through pretty quick. You might get some motivation out of it, but I think if you read a more challenging book, it does in fact cause your mind to expand. And I kind of like that learning process, Joe. I like reading something that I have to think about. And so I have rather strange reading habits. I have a tendency to read like I read a chapter in the shower every day. My wife won't let me have a hot tub, so I like to read in a shower, and because I like the hot water, but I find that I can read a chapter here, read a chapter by my book or by my chair, read a chapter here or there, and it does make your mind work. And I think my favorite business books are really those books that are either very seminal, and or they are books that have heavy duty vocabulary and maybe even a little theory in it. But I think if you haven't read some of the books that have been written by like the Nudge book, I don't know if you've read that or not, but it's an interesting book, and I think it has new ideas. And I think if a banker, because a banker is in an industry that is kind of what we call in academics an agency theory, they all operate the same. Unless you're willing to read books that have innovation in them, you have a tendency to get left behind because you're following everybody instead of innovating. And I think innovation books are awakening.
No, that's great, Bill. I'll tell you what, our audience is, we have a lot of avid readers in our audience, and I'm an avid reader. I suggest a lot of books to the audience. I've reviewed a number of books on the podcast. So now our audience loves that. And I would definitely say, if you ever have any recommendations in the future, always feel free to share, because I love to share them, with the audience as well, especially if we get some good ones. But okay, with that, we'll wrap up. Bill, is there, if people want to contact you, is there any way that
Sure.
they can do that?
Sure. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so you'll be able to find William Minnis on LinkedIn or Bill Minnis. I have emails, you know, wjminnis@yahoo.com, but I think LinkedIn is probably the best way. I have a lot of LinkedIn following, but I'm very active on it, and I think it's a good medium to at least get started introducing yourself to people.
Perfect. No, that's fantastic, Bill. And I'll tell you what, I would love to have you back on when you're ready to launch the book. As soon as
Well,
you're ready to do that, let me know. I'd love to have you back on just to
well, I
talk about the
appreciate it.
book. Yes,
I
absolutely. Would love to do that.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. It gives me something to keeps me out of trouble, writing.
I
Yeah.
love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Bill. And like I said, I definitely look forward to having you back on again soon.
Thank you, Joe. I really appreciate it, and have a great day.
You too. All right, everyone, that was Dr. William Minnis. It's so great having him just come on and share some of his thoughts and experiences on being a bank CEO. And like I said, I'm sure we will get him back on here again soon. But I will wrap up by saying if you like this episode, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, as that always helps the channel. Remember, we are on YouTube, Rumble, and all major podcast platforms. Please be sure to leave your comments down below, as I always like getting back to everybody. And as always, check out some of the other content on the channel. I hope everyone has a great day out there, and I will see you again real soon. Thanks a lot.